Hello, my name is Lindsay Weirich, also known as the Frugal Crafter over on YouTube and on my blog, and I want to wish you a happy 2024. I know my podcast episodes have been kind of few and far between, but I'm going to try to get back into it and maybe even bring some interviews and some conversations this year on the podcast. What we're going to talk about today is something that I have seen discussed a lot online on social media platforms and also among the frugal crafter community when I asked about New Year's resolutions. And the thing that I kept seeing over and over again and hearing from you guys was that for 2024, they want to do a no buy or use what you have, which I think is such a wonderful thing. It's always best to use the supplies you already have, the things you've already bought and paid for, because that's why you bought them. You bought them to use them, right? So we're going to talk about that today and hopefully give you a little encouragement and hopefully make you feel good about the stuff you have so that you'll use it more. So, why are people talking about doing a no buy in 2024? I think there's a multitude of reasons why. I think people are feeling like they're overspending, spending way too much on their hobby, maybe just overwhelmed with how much stuff they have. And when you're surrounded by things that you've collected that you're not using, it's not a good feeling. It makes you feel kind of ashamed and just discouraged and disappointed in yourself. It's kind of like a big mental to-do list when you have all these supplies that you bought for a purpose, but you haven't used them. And you can also be overwhelmed by too many choices. When you sit down to create, you have to make so many decisions before you actually put your pencil to paper. Well, what am I going to draw? What am I going to use for a medium? What am I going to paint on? What am I going to paint with? What am I going to, the subject, all of that. So the more decisions you have, the harder it is to get anything done. It's like when I go to a craft night or I go plein air painting, I just bring a very small kit because I know the fewer things I bring, the more I will get done. And maybe you don't have enough time to use what you have. Maybe you bought all of these things with the best intentions that you were going to spend all Saturday creating, or you're going to spend every Sunday afternoon creating. But, maybe you had to care for an ill parent or spouse or child, or something got in the way, a new job, maybe other interests, and it just took away that time that you would have had to create. And so bringing more chaos and more supplies into the mix is just very unappealing. And last but not least is maybe you lost interest in art or crafting. And sometimes we can lose interest in a hobby, but we still are in the habit of buying supplies for that hobby. It still satisfies a certain urge, or it almost makes us feel like we've done something. We bought the supplies for the project, so we've kind of done the project already. I know it sounds silly, but how many of you have done that? Maybe you had a home improvement project, so you went and you bought a couple gallons of paint, or you bought some wood to make some shelves, or you bought some supplies. So it kind of made you feel like, okay, I've started that project now. I bought the supplies, but then it takes years to actually finish the project up. I've been there. I'm sure a lot of other people have been there too. Another thing that we might want to talk about here is why. Why do we buy these things? If our goal is to buy nothing or buy very little for our hobby, why are we spending all this money? Why are we buying all these things? So I think there's a few reasons. There's a few reasons why I like to, try something new and buy something new, and maybe you have some of the same ones. One would be our brains like new and novel things. We use the same thing over and over again. And yes, they're your tried and trues and they're your favorites, and you always go back to them. But there's something fun and something little sparks off little dopamine glitters in our brain when we try something new. Maybe my downfall is novelty palettes. I love novelty watercolor palettes, travel watercolor palettes, mini palettes. I just think they're so cute and delightful. And there's just some sort of bizarre satisfaction I get by buying them, filling them, using them. But yeah, just adding that to your cart and hitting buy can give you that little bit of like a dopamine rush. Just kind of like finding it. Maybe you've seen this palette, but you haven't been able to find it, or maybe it's been really expensive, but you finally find it at a store that ships to your country and it's a good deal. There's just something kind of satisfying that probably stems from our lizard brains of, being hunter and gatherers. If we found the thing, it's exciting. Just like anybody that collects anything, when you find something that is missing in your collection, there's just a satisfying feeling about that. It can keep us excited about our hobby. I think of hobbies that are more product based, such as card making, stamping, scrapbooking, beading, things where you need to go out and you need to buy the specific supplies for that product, then do the product. I think that those type of hobbies that are very product based, that keeps us exciting. Like if all of these stamp companies decided to go out of business tomorrow, they decided there just wasn't enough money in it and we're no longer going to make stamps, that hobby would die out fairly quickly, I think, even though a lot of us have tons of stamps and tons of supplies to sustain us for decades and decades. The fact that there was nothing new coming out, no new stimulation from the industry, would definitely make a lot of people fall out of the hobby. There is a certain amount of excitement that comes from the products that are supplied by the industry of the hobby that we're in. It does more so, I think, for crafting than for fine art, but those new innovative products do keep us excited and they keep us coming back to the store, and they keep us, when we go back to the store, we see things other people have done, we see other products, it all just kind of feeds in there. Um, and it also can satisfy the itch to create when we buy that thing. Maybe we just were longing for that time. I remember when my children were small, I have a son who's 21 and twin daughters that are 19. So when they were little, when they were babies, I did not have much time at all. I tried to put them down for a nap at the same time so I could eke out maybe half an hour a day to do something creative. And with those times where you just cannot find a second to create, you don't have those 5 minutes. You're going from work to maybe being a caregiver to maybe commuting and doing all the other daily tasks of life. You just don't have that time, but you might have 10 minutes to go online and see something and be inspired and buy it. And while it's not as good as creating, it's kind of like like a carbon copy of what it would be like to create something. It still satisfies a little bit of that itch when we don't have any time to actually partake in the hobby. So I can completely see that. And it can almost be a bit of like a stress relief, or what they call retail therapy. You don't have time to do the thing. That thing brings you comfort. That thing brings you peace of mind. That thing makes you feel good doing that hobby. You don't have time to do it, but if I buy this, I get a little bit of an echo of that feeling. And I think that's what drives a lot of the purchases, especially when we're really in a busy season of life and we can't seem to find that time to create. Another thing about buying art supplies and buying craft supplies or any sort of hobby supply, whether it's woodworking or paddleboarding or boating or fishing or painting, it helps us feel part of a tribe. We're buying into that tribe. We're we're buying a piece of who we are and who we want to be. So when we think of our ideal selves, and January comes around and we're all thinking about our ideal selves, right? We're thinking about who we want to be in the new year and how we can improve ourselves. Maybe we go buy some exercise equipment because we want to be the type of person that works out every day, or we go and we buy some new clothes because we want to be the type of person that dresses up every day, that puts in the effort, that wears the makeup, that does the hair, that wears the jewelry. We want to buy into that tribe and we want to be that type of person. Or we want to buy these art supplies and these craft supplies because we are an artist and we want to prove that we're an artist. So we're buying into that tribe. And our purchases a lot of times aligns with the tribe that we want to be associated with, from the house that we buy, to the furniture that we buy, the car that we buy. Part of it is social signaling. Like, we are an artist. We are um, dancers, we're painters, we're boaters, we're fishers, whatever we are, we want to buy into that tribe, and we want to look the part, and we want that kind of proof that we belong. And marketers love to take advantage of that. They want us to feel that bit of an insecurity that we feel we need to buy in to feel that we belong. So we may think we're buying that tube of paint or that set of paints or those brushes because we need them, and we're buying them to create, which we are, but we're also we're also buying them so we belong in the group, you know? Um, and I don't think that's a healthy reason to buy, but that is definitely something that is exploited for every consumer product. That is an exploited tactic from marketers to get us to buy these things so we feel like we're part of the group, because we all want to belong, we all want to feel part of a community. And if we can't physically find that community around us, if we can buy this product and all of a sudden be part of this community, it's very tempting, and it's a very addictive and almost intoxicating feeling. And it is completely exploited by marketers and influencers that try to get us to buy these products. So just be aware of that. Are you buying that brush because you need that brush? Are you buying that brush because you want to be a part of a group? Are you buying that brush because it's going to do something new? Are you buying that brush because you hope you'll use it because you want to be the type of person that uses that brush? It probably seems like I'm overthinking these decisions, but um, I think it's a good idea to kind of to dive in there and really figure out why it is we feel like we need to be doing a no buy or a low buy, or why are we unhappy with our hobby? Why aren't we painting? It's just part of kind of picking it apart and digging in and knowing ourselves a little bit better. Sometimes we buy things because we don't want to miss out. Everybody else has this brand new thing and it looks pretty cool, and look how much fun they're having. I don't want to miss out on that. I'm guilty of that sometimes. I'll see something that just looks so cool and it looks so fun. I'm like, I have got to have that. That just looks like a total blast. For me, my FOMO purchase, well, I don't even know if it's a FOMO purchase, but I bought an inflatable paddleboard this year. I love being outside. I love kayaking. I love paddleboarding, but um, our truck died, and we're on the fence deciding what we were going to get. And the summer was going by, and I'm like, I really miss being out on the water. And if I had a stand-up paddleboard, I can throw that in the back of my car and I can go out paddleboarding at any time. I am that person. So I'm going to buy this thing. And I have taken it out twice. And mostly because it's a big pain in the butt to inflate that paddleboard every time you want to use it. It's very hard to inflate it to the point you need to inflate it with my little spaghetti arms. And apparently, I'm not committed to my outdoor lifestyle enough to actually like lift weights so I can inflate that thing. And then we bought a truck, and I could just throw my regular paddleboard in the truck or my kayak in the truck, and it's so much easier than using the inflatable paddleboard. So I think sometimes we feel like we're missing out and we buy the thing, then we realize, oh, this wasn't what it was cracked out to be. I should have thought about this a little bit more. I should have talked to people that already had one. I should have borrowed one from somebody who already had one to see if I realistically was going to want to pump that thing up and break it down every time I wanted to use it. But I didn't. And now I have an inflatable paddleboard I have used twice. So, uh, so yeah, and I think part of it also is we think of our fantasy selves, right? When we're thinking about buying these things, we think of like we envision our ideal self, our perfect self, our January 1st self, who is going to be eating all the kale and exercising every day and painting for 2 hours every day and living our best lives. And this is what Fantasy Lindsay would use. Fantasy Lindsay would have these gorgeous brushes, and she'd have this gorgeous palette, and she'd have this gorgeous easel. When we don't think about reality Lindsay, who sits on the couch and puts on her favorite TV show and sketches, from reference photos on her phone, maybe we need to cater our supplies to what we actually do and not what we think we should do or what our ideal self would do. So, think about that. Are you buying this product for reality you or fantasy you? Because if it's for fantasy you got to really see, are you the type of person that's going to do that? Are you the type of person that's going to blow up that paddleboard every day and take it out there? I might actually blow it up, leave it blown up and throw it in the back of the truck. Um but yeah, that was kind of it was a silly purchase. But I guess if I didn't know I was going to be getting a truck, it's still, man, it's so much work. So yeah, you got to identify fantasy you versus reality you. And I think this is another reason we buy, that I think is another really, really predominant one, and it's stress relief. You're stressed out. Maybe you've got a bunch of bills that you don't know how you're going to pay, which is like, why would you shop if you have a bunch of bills? But hear me out. Maybe you've got some really big bill that you got to pay. Maybe you're like, oh my gosh, my kids are going to college. How am I going to pay tuition? Or, oh my gosh, got this big medical bill. How are we going to pay it? And when you're looking at something that's like maybe thousands and thousands of dollars, or something that's really overwhelming, maybe your car's breaking down. You need a new car. You have a big expensive repair, and it's going to be thousands of dollars. When you're comparing that with like a $25 tube of paint or paintbrush or whatever it is, when you're comparing it to something that's like under $100, when you're looking at like you've got this $1,000 expense or several $1,000 expense, that can just seem like a drop in the bucket. And you're like, I'm just gonna, this is gonna give me a little bit of temporary relief. It's going to give me a little bit of, it's gonna feel like self-care, right? You're gonna buy this thing, it's gonna make you feel good in the short term, but it's going to take you away from solving your bigger problems that you're trying to escape from by buying this trinket, basically. So, um, especially if it is just a trinket that isn't going to be better than something you already have in your stash, or isn't going to help you grow, or isn't even going to be that great of quality. Because there's a lot of novel things that are fun to use. Maybe, you get them and they're cute and they're exciting, use them once or twice, but then you kind of forget about them because they're not as good as the stuff you already had. So it just kind of sits on the shelf and it gathers dust. And then you look over at it with the other things and you feel bad. And then the cycle begins again. Because now you're feeling bad about what you've bought. You're feeling bad about yourself. You're not feeling like you have time to create. You're too overwhelmed to create. And then, oh, well, I'll just buy this thing and I'll feel better for a short period of time. So yeah, I can see why why people want to stop this shopping and be a little more intentional. And the final reason why we buy, I think, is because it's a good deal, right? It's a good deal. We see something that we've wanted, or maybe it's something we even already have, but we're like, well, I'm going to run out of that someday. But look, this my favorite paper's on sale, or my favorite pencils are on sale. Stocking up is not a bad thing. If you know you're going to use it, it's not a bad thing. If you can buy paint that's going to stay good for as long as you need to store it for, and you've got room to store it and you've got the money to buy it, then that's not a bad thing. But I think the good deals, I know in my case, can often just end up adding to the pile. And then you start wondering, am I going to be able to use this in my lifetime? Or am I going to be able to use this before it goes bad? And that's where we get, then it's not such a good deal, right? And also, um, sometimes something's seems like a really great deal, but if you never use it, it's not a bargain. It's only a bargain if you actually use it. And I like to think of the cost per use. So like if you go to the store and you buy a pair of jeans and they fit perfectly and they look so good on you and they're high quality and they're expensive, maybe they're like $100, they're really nice jeans, and you wear them 100 times, that's $1 per use. That's really not bad. That's $1 per use. But you might be online and say, "Oh, Old Navy has a sale. Oh, look, those jeans are $10. I'm going to buy 5 pairs of those jeans." They arrive, and oh, maybe they're cut a little funny. They give you a little muffin top. They're a little too snug, or maybe they're a little too long, or whatever. They're not perfect. They're not your favorites, and you wear them twice, and you donate them or you give them away. Well, that was $5 per use. So really, the $100 jeans were better value than the $10 jeans. So I also think about that with art supplies. It's like, if I'm going to use this up, then it's a good deal. But if I'm only use it once or twice or never use it, it's no bargain. It's only a bargain if I'm going to use it. The tube of paint that I pay full price for, that I use every single last drop in the tube, that's a much better value than the paint that I bought on sale that I only used half a tube of. You know what I mean? So, if it's on sale, just ask yourself, would I pay full price for this? That's my rule whether it's clothing or art supplies. I say, would I pay full price for these? Now, my exception would be, I do review a lot of different products for my YouTube channel, which is part of my business. So if I will have like a list going, and then if I see it on sale, I will buy it, because I plan on digging in and reviewing it and posting a review on my channels because it's been reviewed or requested by people, or I've been personally curious about it. But all of this to say is, just because I like something doesn't mean you're going to like it. Just because I give something a good review doesn't mean you need to buy it. I think the more you learn what you like, because, oh my word, working in this industry where I am reviewing products so often, and previously in the stamping industry where I had to create products with other people's designs constantly, I got to the point where I didn't know what I liked anymore. I was trying so many new things so frequently that I didn't even know what my favorite thing was, because I was just so used to all these other things. Sometimes we don't know if we like something because we like it, or we like something because we're used to it. Because, and marketers know this, we like what we're used to. So the more you see a product, the more you see a style of clothing, something you might think was so ugly when you first saw it, the more you see it, the more you get used to it, and then the more you like it. Just like people saying, I would never wear flare pants, I would never wear bell bottoms, because I got so sick of seeing them in the 70s and they look so dated and so cheesy. But then everyone was wearing flares and bell bottoms again, because the more you get used to it, the more you like it. And the same thing is with art supplies. The more you keep seeing all of your favorite YouTubers and Instagram artists and people online using those products, if everybody seems to have Faber-Castell watercolor markers, all of a sudden everybody's using them, everyone's making beautiful things, whether you even like using markers or not, you might think that, oh, I like that. You like that artwork. I must like that product. Everyone's using that product. I guess I need to get that product. It might just be you're used to seeing it a lot, so it's making you feel like it's everywhere and you're missing out. And then we go back to FOMO, and all of these different reasons why we buy just reinforce each other. And marketers know this, and they use that frequency, and they use these tactics to get us to want to buy more and more and more. So, how can we be more intentional with our purchases? When you get the itch to buy, ask yourself, this is my number one thing, and I started doing this after I did my big KonMari declutter back, I think it was like, oh gosh, it was like 6 or 7 years ago now. Um, do I have another supply that will do the same thing? So I had a really hard time getting rid of stuff. I have this kind of, and I think most of us do if we're creative, we have this tendency to kind of hang on to things because it could be useful someday. And also, if you're an artist, maybe you've been a starving artist and you don't really want to get rid of something that you might be able to use one day. And so I was having a really hard time getting rid of ribbon. And I had worked for two ribbon companies in the past. And so I had a ton of ribbon. And I was also really burnt out on trying to find creative ways to use ribbon because I had worked for two ribbon companies. And when I was looking at this big pile of ribbon, and with a KonMari method, you pile everything, all like items up, and you get it all in one space and you see what you have. And I had a massive amount of ribbon. And I was really struggling. And I said, okay, do I have something else that would do the same thing as this ribbon? Now, I don't sew all that often, generally using them in cards. And it occurred to me I could use a strip of paper if I wanted that ribbon effect. I could use crepe paper. I could use washi tape. I could use this and that. And I came up with all kinds of ideas, a torn piece of fabric. So that allowed me to get rid of probably 3/4 of my ribbon stash. And I gave it to other crafters that could use it. I gave it to schools. I gave it to, anybody that wanted it. And it felt so freeing to destash all of that ribbon because I had so much and I was never going to get through it all. And I kept my favorites and I kept a good variety. So when a project came along that I needed ribbon for, I'd have something I could use, but I didn't need to keep it all. So when you see some really cute technique, something really fun, and you really want to try it, ask yourself, do I have another supply that will do the same thing? And shop your stash first, because either you're going to find out that one, this product works exactly the same as that last product, so I'm all set. Or you'll discover a new way to use a product you already have. Or you'll decide, okay, no, that didn't work for that at all. Now I can justify buying the thing. And you're going to feel good that you used the supplies you had first and you made sure that you couldn't do it with what you already had before you go and buy the next thing. So that's kind of a triple or trifecta of goodness, because you're going to feel good. You're going to know what your supplies will do. And then you'll feel justified or good about buying that purchase. Or you might do this technique with another supply and you're like, I don't think I really like doing this. And that could save you an expensive purchase because you've just found out something more about yourself. We've all tried those crafts and we've all tried those techniques and those products that just didn't gel with our personality. And it's better to know that before you spend a lot of money and then feel bad about having this extra thing in your house that you don't know what to do with. Um, then ask yourself, will the addition of this supply make the other supplies I have more useful? Or will it make some of those supplies redundant? So when I'm adding a new stamp to my collection, I think about that. I think, well, the addition of this, like I just bought some vintage looking bottle stamps from Darkroom Door, and I'd wanted them for a while, and I kept thinking about it. I'm like, man, I could use these stamps and then I could paint flowers to go in the vases. I could use these stamps, and then I could stamp other flowers to go in these vases. I could use these stamps, and I could stamp eyeballs in the vases, or I could stamp frogs in the vases, or I could stamp fairies in they're bottles. I could stamp all sorts of weird things in those bottles. I could use them with my label stamps and make bottles with labels on them for like Halloween or apothecary theme projects. And I thought of all these different ways I could use those bottle stamps. And so I bought them and I did a batch of cards with them, and they were so fun. And they didn't duplicate anything I had. I didn't have any bottles like that. I decided to store them with my mason jar stamps because I like to use them for very similar techniques and similar occasions. They expanded my stash. They made my flower stamps more useful. They made a lot of my other stamps more useful. They weren't redundant. They didn't replace any stamps I already had. So they expanded my repertoire of stamping. So that's a good idea. Now, if I was to go buy another mason jar stamp, that would not be a really smart idea because I already have quite a collection of mason jar stamps in different sizes. And I really feel like that collection's complete. So that would not enhance it. Maybe I would find a jar that was way better than the ones I already had, and maybe it would replace it, which is fine. If you want to replace something you have that you've enjoyed with something of better quality, that's totally fine too. But just, understand that before you put your money down and you buy the thing. Ask yourself, if why do I want this? Is this going to be an improvement? Like, say you've been using inexpensive oil pastels and you want to upgrade to, say, Sennelier. Um, you've loved these pastels. They've worked pretty well in the past, but maybe they're not doing exactly what you want. And you know, you just need to upgrade to the next product for your artwork to get better. That's fine. Upgrade. I think that's absolutely justified. Does this product fill a need or solve a problem? Maybe you've been painting and you're like, man, I need a warmer yellow. I don't have a warm yellow in this set of oil paints, and I just can't mix all the colors I need to mix. Yes, that solves a problem. Absolutely get it. Or are you buying something that's just almost identical to what you already have in quality, or maybe even less quality, but it's just new and you want to try it? Maybe think, well, just identify the fact that this is not going to replace anything you have. It's just going to be redundant and probably not anything earth-shattering and might be disappointing. As long as you know that, you can really objectively evaluate whether you want to buy that thing or not. And finally, ask yourself, did I need this thing before I saw it advertised to me? And I don't know how many times I have been in the morning. I often will drink my coffee and I'll watch some YouTube videos, or sometimes I'll be taking a lunch break and I'll throw a video on, and an artist will be using something that I didn't know existed, but all of a sudden I have to have it. And it's like, wait a minute, if I'd never turned on this computer today, I wouldn't even know this thing existed, let alone feel like I had to have it right now. But that can be a very powerful urge. So ask yourself, did I need this before I saw it? Did I have even have this problem that I'm trying to solve before I saw this? And this is something I see with like cosmetics, cosmetic advertising. I see that a lot. Like, I didn't even know that was a problem. I didn't even know that that this was bad. That I didn't even know this thing was wrong about me until I saw that advertisement. And I guess I need the vitamin C serum because my skin isn't as even as it ought to be. You know, it's like, did you have this problem before it was given to you by a advertiser or an influencer or whatnot? Or something, it could even be something pretty innocuous. Like, I saw this little dye to make a little box that you could package a lip gloss in, and I thought, oh, that's cute. I want to make my own lip glosses, and then I want that dye so I can package them. It's like, okay, slow your roll, Lindsay. You don't need to start a lip gloss making business so you can buy that dye and you can make that box. Just maybe give yourself a little more moratorium, whether it be 3 days, a week, 30 days, and see if you really want that product afterwards, because they're going to keep making it. There's nothing out there that's so unique that they're just going to stop making it tomorrow, so you have to buy it now. Considering these aspects can make you more intentional. And for me, 2024 is the year of intentionality. I want to be more intentional with how I spend my time. I want to be more intentional with the work that I say yes to. I want to be more intentional with the classes I create. I want to be more intentional with the supplies I use and the supplies I buy. And I want to be more intentional with my time, how I spend my time overall. I might have repeated myself. And if I did, I apologize. But being intentional with what we add to our home, what we add to our supply stash, is going to make us have more value. We're going to have more value. We're going to have better things to spend our time with. We're going to buy the things that will truly suit us. And I think that's going to lead to us spending a lot more time creating and a lot less time shopping. And I think that's what most of us want to get to, right? I don't think anyone sets a New Year's resolution of, I want to shop more, I want to buy more things, and I want more clutter in my house. Nobody, well, maybe somebody does, but I don't know anyone personally that would have those goals. I think mostly we want to spend more time with our family and friends. We want to have a community. We want to create. We want to make work we're proud of. We want to leave a mark on the world that is positive. And it comes through just being intentional with everything that we do, and how we spend our money is a big part of that, because we spend our time to earn our money. So how we spend our money is really how we spend our time. If you're working 40 hours a week and you are making a certain amount of money and you're spending all of that money, if you could work 35 hours a week and get 5 of those hours back because you're not spending as much. It's, if you think of each of the supplies on your shelf as a portion of your life you've given up to have that thing, then it makes you a lot more intentional as to what you add to your home, to your stash, what you spend your money on. Some things are totally worth it. Some things, when you think of like, oh, I gave up 30 minutes of my life to have that product and that product is disappointing, or I gave up 2 hours of my life to buy that product and I haven't even used it, that can feel very wasteful because time really is the only finite resource we have. And we don't want to waste that, right? We don't want to spend our lives toiling away to buy things that we don't even like or use or appreciate in the future. All right. So let's see. I've got another so if supply I'm looking at my notes. I apologize. I'm rusty, guys. I'm rusty. So if the supply that you're thinking about buying fills a void in your stash or is really an upgrade to something that you already have, it's probably a smart purchase. But if the supply is just more of the same, or you're buying it to fill a void, then maybe think of something you could do to fill that void that would be a little bit more productive, like creating art, calling a friend, meeting up with a friend to paint. That's something I love to do in the summer. I love to call my friends and be like, hey, you guys want to go to the beach and maybe do a little painting? Or maybe we'll just go to the beach with my friends and I'll bring my watercolors. If I get the chance to do a little sketch, I will. If I don't, I don't, but I will have had time well spent. I love to go hiking. So I love to have small little stashes I can carry with me. And if something's pretty, I can stop and rest and paint for a bit and then go hike some more. Those are quality times, those are quality things. Maybe you need a little travel palette to do that. Well, then that is a quality purchase, in my opinion. Just ask yourself these things before you buy, and hopefully you'll be filling your life with things that bring you joy and bring you a peace of mind and a full heart rather than feeling any embarrassment or shame for the things you've bought to bring into your life. I mean, in conclusion, there's nothing wrong with buying a treat now and then or replacing what you use up. That's great because you know you've used it and you liked it. So buying it again is perfectly acceptable. But if you find yourself just feeling overwhelmed or feeling ashamed or looking at your pile of supplies and thinking that's a big to-do list that I'm never going to get done, then maybe it's time to just take a step back and be intentional and evaluate everything before you bring it in. I think as humans, we tend to see the grass as being greener on the other side of the fence. Maybe we've got a set of colored pencils, but we can't get our work to look like the artist that we admire. So we think, I'll buy their set of colored pencils and then my work will look like their work. We need to be realistic and think, well, that artist that we really admire has been drawing since they were 5 and and they spend 40 hours a week drawing and painting because that's their job. And they spent 40 hours on that specific painting that we're trying to recreate in an hour. And so it's not realistic to think that we're going to buy those pencils they use and we're all of a sudden going to make this magical painting that's just like theirs or just as good as theirs if we're not willing to put the work in and the time in to get those sort of results. So just think our supplies are the tools of our expression. They are not us. They are not our soul. They are not extensions of us. We may think that they prove that we are who we are. If we have all these art supplies and we must be an artist, but the art is within us. The artist, we are the artist, not the tools. The tools are just how we express our art. So whether that be a ballpoint pen and a notepad or expensive pastel matte paper and schminke soft pastels, it doesn't so much matter. What matters is the time that we put into our art and actually creating the art. We're not going to be better painters by buying more paint. We'll be better painters by using our paint. So the next time you feel that itch that you've got to have what so-and-so has, maybe you're even watching one of my reviews and you're like, I got to have that. I got to have that now. Or you're watching a tutorial that I've done. You're like, I need those paints because I cannot possibly paint that without those paints she's using. Just slow your roll. Look at what you have. And people are always saying, what's the best paint to buy, Lindsay? I want to start off right. What do I buy? What's the best watercolors I can buy? And I say, that depends. That depends on where you live. That if you live in Germany, you can get Schminke paints for probably half the price of Daniel Smith paints. Well, get the Schminke paints. They're going to be just as good. Whatever, major brand is closest to you, that's the most affordable for you, that's probably going to be just as good as the one that costs twice as much because it's being imported from a country that, you know, charges more in your country. So just get a decent brand of whatever paint that you like to use, whether it be acrylics, oils, watercolors, and just put the time in. The time is going to make more difference than the supplies. I mean, have a decent quality, don't use dollar store materials and expect professional results. But as long as you're going with a decent name brand in the media that you're looking to work in, it's going to be fine. There is no best. But I think that the salespeople from these companies, they all want you to think that their brand is the best, and they want you to buy their brand, and they want you to buy the new colors that come out from their brand, even though you can perfectly well mix the colors yourselves. They're businesses, and they need to sell product to stay in business. So just kind of keep that in mind. Another thing though, this is kind of like a little aside, a little brief aside, a little side tangent, if you will. I think we also need to stop that gatekeeping with art supplies, both for the really high end stuff and the low end stuff. I think we need to stop the gatekeeping. I don't know how many times I have seen people make fun of others that do a different hobby than they do. So maybe they're a quote unquote fine artist, and somebody is using the supply that they love in an adult coloring book or on a greeting card or on a scrapbook page, and they will just be like, well, what a waste. They shouldn't be using that on an adult coloring book. But I want to say, please stop that, because say your favorite color pencils are Derwent Lightfast or Caran d'Ache Luminance, and you see somebody using them in an adult coloring book. That's great. That's great for a couple of reasons. For one, they're not buying toxic products that were made under questionable circumstances. Another thing is they're supporting that company that you presumably want to stay in business because they're your favorite. And thirdly, they're getting the experience of using a really beautiful quality supply, and they're going to be more likely to stick with their hobby if they start off with good supplies. So let's stop the art supply gatekeeping. If people want to make greeting cards using Daniel Smith watercolors, let them. That's going to make sure the brands that we love stay in business. When people stop using the higher quality stuff for cheaper knockoffs, that's when our favorite companies get into trouble, and they start to have to deploy techniques like having their supplies made in countries with lower income and health standards. That's when they have to start competing with these lower end companies. And I've seen it happen. Winsor & Newton is a prime example of a company that's kind of started to race to the bottom to compete with the lower quality stuff, and have started having a lot of their supplies made in China. So, and there's nothing wrong with supplies made in China, but I'm saying, if you want those companies that you love to stay in business, you have to support those companies. And telling people their work does not deserve that type of supply is not helping. It's kind of like when people love a rock and roll band, but then the band gets popular, and then they're like, well, they sold out, I don't like them anymore. It's like, you love that band, don't you want them to succeed? You don't want them to starve for the rest of their life, right? Well, same thing with these companies. You don't Yeah, just I think we just need to stop gatekeeping. And also, on the other end of the spectrum, if somebody wants to use budget supplies, if that's what they can afford, if that's what they're happy using because they don't feel so precious about wasting them, let them, for goodness sakes. If they want to use Amazon colored pencils because it's giving them the look that they want, they're happy with the results, let them. Let them use what they want to use. Let's just let people use the supplies they want to use, create the art they want to create, and not make them feel bad about it. Creating is good. The more if more people created, I think we'd have a lot less problems in the world. We'd have a lot less depression in the world. We'd have a lot of hopelessness, a lot less hopelessness, and we'd have people feeling a lot better about themselves. And spreading this sort of acceptance in our online communities is really important. So if you see somebody that's using Derwent Lightfast pencils in their coloring book and they're doing a beautiful job and they're having fun, encourage them. Or scroll on by. You don't have nobody needs to make a snide comment about that. And the world would be a lot better if we didn't have so many snide comments online too. So there's my 2 cents. I hope you found this podcast inspiring. I hope I made you feel good about the stuff you have. I definitely don't want anyone to feel bad about their collection. I certainly have probably more supplies than I can use up in my lifetime, if I have to be 100% honest. And my goal this year is to use more of my favorites. I am in this weird situation where I have the opportunity to review a bunch of products, and I am curious. I think curiosity is probably what drives me to buy weird novelty palettes and stuff. I'm just curious at how they perform. I'm curious as how they are next to other brands that I've used. I'm curious as to how they perform against materials that are much more expensive or much less expensive. And at least I can share my reviews online so other people can make wiser purchases or satisfy their curiosity or know if something is worth it before they spend their money. I think that's probably the least evil thing I can do with my with my opportunities here, because yeah, I am curious and I do like to see how these different things perform and whatnot. And I'm certainly not perfect, and I certainly buy foolish things and can be wasteful. So I'm not pointing the finger at anybody, and I don't want anyone to feel bad or shamed for anything they've purchased. I want you to use your supplies and create and feel good about yourself. That's the ethos of what I do online. And I hope this podcast helped you a little bit in achieving that goal, if that's a goal you have. So you can let me know in the comments, are you contemplating doing a no buy or a low buy, or are you just going to try to be more intentional with your purchases? Or maybe you're just saying, I need to use what I have, Lindsay. That's what I'm going to do this year. I think it's all wonderful. I think you're going to have a good year, and just try before you buy. Try what you have before you buy something new. And I think you're going to find, if nothing else, you're going to end up using your supplies a lot more. And sometimes I think just getting in the studio and playing with supplies will scratch that itch that maybe you had to buy something new. I know it does for me. So I hope it helps you make more art in 2024. And if you have any ideas for the podcast, anything you'd like to discuss, maybe anybody you'd like to see if I could get an interview with, let me know that in the comments too, because I have a radio background. I know it probably doesn't sound like it. I know I talk too fast, but um, my background is actually in radio, and I would love to do more podcasts. I find it a very exciting medium, and I want to thank you so much for listening, because I know there's so many different things that you could spend your time doing, and I appreciate you being here. With that, I want to thank you for watching or listening, I guess. Until next time, as always, happy crafting. Bye.